Well, today we're looking at session number 10 in our attributes of God, and we're going to switch to immutability, I-M-M-U-T-A-B-I-L-I-T-Y. And it's the attribute of God that we want to study today. So let's define it. It's very simple. Immutability means unchanging, eternally the same. To change is to become something different, something that you were not previously. So think of it. If God could change in any way, he would be two different beings at 2 points in time. Not both could be God. As a matter of fact, neither of them could be God. We go back to the burning bush in Exodus 3, verse 14, and God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, I am has sent me to you. And that phrase, I am who I am, could imply for us, I am who I have always been. I am who I am now. I am who I am forevermore, eternally. So, that's simply God's statement that he is eternal. He is that necessary being that we've talked about before. If God were changeable, if he were mutable, you could not know him for certain, because what you know of him one moment may not be true the next. Thus, you could neither trust, service, nor worship someone like that. So God must be immutable. Being perpetually the same separates him from all creatures. Immutability is one attribute not shared by creatures. It's the one character of God that we do not share. Plain and simple. I had a student one time who said he would not like to be God because God, being omniscient, could not learn. Do you ever think of that? God doesn't learn. If God learns, his understanding and his memory would change. Immutability makes God like a rock, and of course that's what he has proclaimed in many scriptures. Deuteronomy 32 verses 3 and 4. For I proclaim the name of Yahweh, ascribe greatness to our God, the rock. His work is perfect, for all his ways are just, a God of faithfulness and without injustice, righteous and upright is he. So Moses was laying out the immutable character of God as right, proper, righteous, just. And James says something related in 1:16 and 17. Do not be deceived, my beloved brethren. Every good thing bestowed and every perfect gift, going fishing, every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shifting shadow. Jacob said that God is immutable. Or you can go back and look at Job in chapter 23, verse 13. But he, Yahweh, is unique, and who can turn him? He said there's nothing that any creature can do to change the nature of God. And what his soul desires, that he does. There's your omnipotence in order. What God chooses to do, he will do. So, God has neither evolved, grown, or improved, nor decayed. He simply doesn't change. I know you're going to come up with some scriptures that imply that he does. That he does, for example, change his mind, but that's a gift to us language-wise. It does not say that God is mutable. God is neither evolved, grown, or improved, nor has he been corrupted or decayed. Malachi 3:6. God says this of himself, for I, Yahweh, do not change. Therefore you, O sons of Jacob, are not consumed. God could say, if your behavior would change me, I'd have to wipe you out. But it can't. Or again, as God told Moses at the burning bush, we saw it a minute ago, he said to Moses, I am who I am. And you tell Israel, I am has sent Moses you to you. Or God himself in Jeremiah 4:28. Jeremiah 4, verse 28. For this the earth shall mourn, and the heavens above be dark, because I have spoken, I have purposed, and I will not change my mind, nor will I turn from it. What's he saying? Look, I don't change. You can trust me. If I said I will do it, I will do it. Why can he guarantee that? Because he is eternal. He is also immutable. Time has no influence on Yahweh. That is, and let's sum this up a bit, God does not change with time or over time. He does not change in his essence. He does not change in his attributes. He does not change in his will. He does not change his word. Those things are fixed in concrete, if you please, or written in stone. They're not going to be erased and rewritten. Semper fide, always faithful. Or as the Marines say, semper fidelis, always faithful. But there's also semper idem, I-D-E-M, always the same, semper idem, always the same, immutable. So it is for God and his word. Let's look at a few passages from Psalms 33:11 first. First, the counsel of Yahweh stands forever, the plans of his heart from generation to generation. He's immutable. Psalm 119:18. Open my eyes that I may behold wonderful things from thy law. His law is something that is immutable also. Psalm 100, verse 5. For the Lord Yahweh is good. His loving kindness is everlasting. That's one of his characteristics. It doesn't change. And his faithfulness, another characteristic, to all generations. It does not change. His loving kindness is immutable. His faithfulness is immutable. Psalm 33:11. The counsel of the Lord Yahweh stands forever, the plans of his heart from generation to generation. His plan, his will does not change. It is immutable. Now you can jump to the New Testament if you want. You won't see any changes there. Hebrews 6:17 and 18. In the same way, God, desiring even more to show the heirs of the promise, the unchangeableness of his purpose, the immutability of his purpose, interposed with an oath, in order that by two unchangeable things, two immutable things, in which it is impossible for God to lie. There's the first immutable characteristic. He cannot lie. We may have strong encouragement, we who have fled for refuge in laying hold of the hope set before us. So, he can't lie, and he must do what he says he will do. So that makes our hope immutable. That hope that is given to us through God's promises for those who are his, those are immutable. They will come to pass. They will be experienced. And the love for his people, same thing. Jeremiah 31:3. The Lord Yahweh appeared to him from afar, saying, I have loved you with an everlasting love, an immutable love. Therefore I have drawn you with loving kindness, that is immutable. John 13:1. Now before the feast of the Passover, Jesus, knowing that his hour had come, that he should depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them how long? To the end. Eis telos, to the max. And Romans 8:28 and 29. From the standpoint of the gospel, they, the Jews, are enemies for your sake. But from the standpoint of God's choice, they are beloved for the sake of the fathers. For the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. For the gifts and the calling and the promises of God are immutable. How about that? That it says, from the standpoint of the Gospels, the Jews are enemies for your sake. But if you think God's written them off, from the standpoint of God's choice, they are still beloved for the sake of the fathers. God's love for Israel is immutable. It's set aside temporarily in its outworkings so that Gentiles will be saved, but one day Israel will be redeemed. And what about his mercy? Is it immutable? Lamentations 3:22 and 23. We saw this not long ago, folks. Yahweh's loving kindness indeed never cease, they don't change, for his compassions never fail, they never change. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. In other words, his compassion, his faithfulness is eternal and eternally immutable. Isaiah 54:10. For the mountains may be removed, and the hills may shake, but my loving kindness will not be removed from you. Speaking of Israel, speaking of the poet who is writing Lamentations. And my covenant of peace will not be shaken. My covenant of peace with Israel is immutable, says Yahweh, who has immutable compassion on you. So in spite of how badly things were looking after the Babylonian captivity, he said, those things are still immutable, they're still in place, because God is immutable, his will is fixed, it is immutable. His will is stable, it is immutable. His word is sure, the word we study is immutable. As are his promises, both blessings and cursings. You remember that from Lamentations, where he said, God's keeping his covenant promise to curse if you disobey. He still is faithful to his promises in spite of your behavior. Ezekiel 8, and you get the point here. A lot of what we're talking about is found all through both Old Testament and New Testament, and that word is, as I may say again, immutable. Ezekiel 8:17 and 18. And he said to me, do you see, and this is Yahweh speaking to Ezekiel, apparently, and he said to me, do you see this, son of man? He called Ezekiel son of man quite frequently. Is it too light a thing for the house of Judah to commit the abominations which they have committed here, and they're looking at the temple, that they have filled the land with violence and provoked me repeatedly? Remember, when Habakkuk was talking about this, Habakkuk was holding up this violence and this evil and saying, God, why are you not acting? I can't understand this. So here God himself is saying this. This is what Judah has done. They filled the land with violence. They provoked me repeatedly. For behold, they are putting the twig to their nose. They don't even want to smell what's going on, I guess. Verse 18, therefore, I indeed shall deal in wrath. In other words, God said, I made a promise for cursing and wrath and judgment with disobedience. Therefore, in verse 18, I indeed shall deal with Israel's error in ways. I will deal with it in wrath. My eye will have no pity, nor shall I spare. And though they cry in my ears with a loud voice, yet I shall not listen to them. What's that last say? Is that really saying God said, I'm not going to listen to him? Yeah, he said it, but what's he saying? My judgment, as promised in Deuteronomy, will stand. I don't care how much they cry. I don't care how much noise they make. My statements, my promises, my will is immutable. So you see this all over that way. And then that's a good thing, because our God is always the same, always faithful, always loving, kind. And I know that's hard to relate when you're being judged, that God is in fact being kind, but it is true. Where we're going to go next? Well, my notes say we're going to go to grace next. That'll take a couple of sessions, I would think. So, hang with us. We're going to change. Immutability is one that seems kind of neutral. It isn't, because it gives us all the guarantees that allows us to have trust, faith, and reliance on our God. And grace, that's one that's going to be very positive. Without it, we would be in deep, deep trouble. I started to say doo-doo, but